¿Todavía no? ¿Ya? Hola, ¿qué tal? Buenas tardes. Ya estamos en el tercer bloque de este segundo día del tercer Congreso Internacional de Educación para el Desarrollo Sustentable. Estamos muy contentos, ya tuvimos en la mañana una muy bonita presentación de artística con dos músicos locales en temáticas relacionadas con medio ambiente y educación para la sustentabilidad, paneles sobre educación ciudadana, educación intercultural, huertas educativas también, paneles, casi alrededor de 12 paneles que se presentaron recién y acaban de terminar. Recuerden, en www.cieds.cl van a poder encontrar todos estos paneles, se pueden estar viendo, contamos ya con cerca de 150 visibilizaciones de la ponencia principal ayer que tuvimos de Nadia Valenzuela y todos estos paneles también, si no se vieron ahí sincrónicamente, ya más de 60 personas han podido estar viéndolos y va a seguir creciendo este número, estamos muy contentos. Y ahora estamos en una ocasión muy especial, realmente tenemos el privilegio y el honor de tener a uno de los más grandes exponentes de la educación ambiental y al aire libre a nivel nacional, Andrés Reed, colega de la casa y gran investigador del Centro UC de Desarrollo Local. Y además, se caen los aplausos en el estudio, muchas gracias por estar con nosotros, Andrés.
Gracias,
y a una gran exponente a nivel internacional, todos los que hemos estudiado y hemos estado trabajando en educación ambiental, educación para la sustentabilidad, educación ciudadana con un compromiso especial en temas relacionados con actitudes proambientales. Conocemos a Louise Chawla y estamos muy contentos de que ella esté con nosotros hoy día y les voy a dejar la palabra de Andrés para que nos presente a Louise y luego vamos a ir al video de su presentación para tener una conversación final. Queremos, todo esto va a estar siendo registrado por nuestra querida Chris Neckelman desde el emprendimiento Keep Ideas. Les recomiendo que los sigan en Instagram, que los sigan en las redes sociales. Realmente muy bonito el trabajo, lo van a poder estar viendo ahí en su pantalla. Ya hicieron el registro ayer de Nadia y ahora simultáneamente va a estar registrando y haciendo un registro gráfico de la presentación de Luis. Andrés, por favor.
Bueno, muchas gracias, Martín. Un placer estar aquí conectados en el tercer Congreso de Educación para la Sustentabilidad. Me abruma la presentación, yo creo que no es tan así, pero bueno, encantado de poder acompañarlo. Sí, lo que puedo decir es que ya llevo un buen tiempo estudiando e intentando comprender y generar conocimiento respecto de la experiencia de los niños en la naturaleza, de las niñas y los niños, cómo aprenden, qué es lo que aprenden y cuánto se conectan o no con el mundo natural y cómo eso tiene efectos sobre sus conductas futuras. Y en ese sentido, para mí es súper interesante y además un privilegio poder presentar a Louise Chawla. Como decía Martín, en realidad ella tiene un trabajo bastante seminal y como yo diría pionero. Uno podría rastrear sus publicaciones de 2006 en adelante, incluso antes, sobre trabajo, sobre cómo las experiencias en la naturaleza, cómo las experiencias de asociatividad, la experiencia de trabajo conjunto, generan conductas proambientales, generan actitudes proambientales. Por tanto, es un fundamento esencial para entender cómo podemos operar y cómo podemos generar procesos que ayuden a la sustentabilidad realmente. Entonces, yo lo que quiero comentar, estaba viendo recién a propósito de la presentación uno de los últimos trabajos de ella, que lo recomiendo porque hace una síntesis de todos los estudios que han estado publicándose en los últimos 20 años sobre cómo se modifican las conductas ambientales en la primera infancia y hace un estudio muy interesante. Luego también podemos debatirlo y podemos también compartirlo quizás en la dirección a través del chat. Les quiero recordar que es muy importante que hagan sus preguntas a través del chat de YouTube. Nosotros con Martín las vamos a canalizar una vez terminada la presentación, que vamos a ver un video en que lo tenemos ya traducido. Va a estar Luis disponible para que conversemos. Para no hacer tanta introducción, les voy a contar quién es Louise Chawla para los que no la conocen. Ella actualmente es profesora emérita de la Universidad de Colorado en Boulder. Es becaria de la Community Engagement, Design and Research y es participante activa en el Growing Up Boulder. Es una asociación que junto al CEDAR, que es la Community Engagement, Design and Research, del Distrito Escolar del Valle de Boulder y la ciudad de Boulder, integra las ideas de niños, niñas y jóvenes en la planificación y diseño urbano. Un poco de eso nos va a hablar hoy día Luis. Ella es ex coordinadora internacional del programa Creciendo en Ciudades de la UNESCO entre el año 96 y el 2006 y también es miembro del el Comité Científico Asesor de la Children and Nature Network, que es una red también muy recomendable para los que les interesa reconocer y aprender sobre las experiencias educativas hacia la sustentabilidad. Y más recientemente, muy recientemente, ella es coautora del libro Placemaking with Children and Youth Participator, Practice for Planning Sustainable Communities. Estuve bien.
Y ese libro también tiene un capítulo de algunos investigadores de acá, del CEDEL.
Sí, sí,
Súper interesante.
ahí estuvimos también colaborando, y también este libro justamente también es editado con la coedición de Victoria Dare, que fue una de las ponentes del CIEDS del año anterior. Así que seguimos estando conectados. Sin más, la presentación de Louise Chawla junto a Mara Mintzer, que son las autoras de esta presentación, se titula Construyendo asociatividad para una educación cívica y de acción civil. Entonces, disfrutemos, no olviden de hacer sus envíos o sus preguntas por el chat de YouTube, y ahí las vamos a estar canalizando para que Luis pueda comentarlas. Muchas gracias.
Hello, I welcome this opportunity to share with you what we are doing here in our city of Boulder, Colorado. And I look forward to the questions and answers at the end, where I can hear from you as well. So let me jump in to my presentation. Let me share my screen. I'm Louise Chawla, and I'm in the program in environmental design at the University of Colorado in Boulder. I'm co-presenting, really. This is a presentation that reflects the work and thinking together that I've done with Mara Mintzer, who's the director of the Growing Up Boulder program, which is what I'll be drawing upon in this presentation. Also, it includes a number of slides that Mara has contributed. So it's very much a joint presentation coming to you from both of us. I'm really happy to be invited to talk with you about this topic of involving young people in civic learning and civic engagement in their communities, because I think this is more important now than it has ever been before. The current generation of young people are those growing up in what the biologist E.O. Wilson calls the bottleneck for our planet. The period of maximum stress on planet Earth as populations rise, consumption rises, we have climate change, we have biodiversity loss, and with all of these pressures on the planet converging, helping young people learn skills of civic decision making and collective action, in my view, has never been more important. But we're talking about young people who are too young to vote yet. So what does civic engagement mean in this case for this age group? It means considering social and environmental responsibility when making decisions, thinking broadly, thinking beyond just themselves. This picture is from one of our projects done at an elementary school. These are English language learners, a special class for English language learners, and they designed a nature playground for their school that also functions as a playground for the community after hours, with special consideration for making sure it would be a playground for people of all abilities. So they invited into the classroom and learned about what it's like going through the world, blind or deaf or with different physical disabilities, and took others' well-being into consideration as they worked. Civic engagement includes investigating how community spaces and local environments function, and then problem solving issues in those places. This is a picture from our work with a science elective class in a middle school. They're studying the ecology of a creek in walking distance of their school, because there are major plans, and you'll hear more about them as I go along, to redevelop the park along the creek. But before sharing ideas for that park redevelopment, they needed to know about the ecology of that space. And so that's what they're learning there. Civic engagement involves voicing ideas to decision makers and other people in the community through speaking or through writing, through the arts. And the arts are great media to use with young people. This is a picture of when we were partnering with a group of elder artists, engaging children of different ages in communicating what a child-friendly city means to them. And the young man you see there is a university design student who is working with them. Community engagement also involves educating others so they can make choices that benefit their communities and the environment. This is from a project we did with fourth graders who studied the local prairie around their school, and which included an area that belonged to the Department of Open Space and Mountain Parks for the city. And they designed these signs for the public trails through the open space, many a variety of signs telling people about the different creatures that lived there, and also why it was so important to stay on the trail. Community service is certainly part of civic engagement. This is a picture from a family nature club that's just done a cleanup along the Chesapeake Bay, and are showing what they just pulled out of the waters. Service learning can also involve raising funds for environmental causes. These are high school students who planned a dog walking initiative to raise funds to donate to a nature reserve in Tanzania. And it involves the real hands-on work of shaping places and physically changing them for the better by participating in groups that improve communities and natural spaces. And this is a group, multi-generational tree planting in operation there. So when I talk about we, I mean all of us who work together in a program called Growing Up Boulder in our city. It began in 2009, so we're in our 12th year of work now. Its mission is to empower young people with opportunities for inclusion and influence and deliberation on local issues that affect their lives. Those of us who began this project came into it with experience with an international framework that supports children's rights to civic engagement. For 10 years, I coordinated a revival of UNESCO's Growing Up in Cities project from 1996 to 2006. And that was originally started in the 1970s by the urban planner Kevin Lynch, based on principles of participatory action research and also advocacy planning, where planners wanted to learn about local communities in order to advocate for them as planning decisions were made. So that was kind of one of the kind of the main influences that flowed into what we're doing in our city. At the same time, when we were reviving Growing Up in Cities for UNESCO, UNICEF and UN Habitat were creating the Child Friendly Cities Initiative, and we were very interlinked at that time. I sat in on meetings for the Child Friendly Cities Initiative, and leaders of that were experts who sat in on meetings for our Growing Up in Cities project. So really all linked together. The Child Friendly Cities Initiative draws directly on the Convention on the Rights of the Child, as well as the Habitat Agenda, which also says that young people should be included in participatory processes in their communities. So the United States is the only nation in the United Nations which has not ratified the Convention on the Rights of the Child. But that does not stop cities from endorsing the convention and following its principles. And that's what we're trying to do here in Boulder and in other cities in our country. But you are a country that has ratified the Convention on the Rights of the Child. So you're probably familiar with these civic rights, which are embedded in the convention. The right to express views freely in all matters that affect the child. The right to seek, impart, and receive information of all kinds in writing or print, in art, or through other media. The right to freedom of thought and conscience and religion, and the right to freedom of association and peaceful assembly. All of those which are rights which are essential for civic engagement. So how do we work? How have we kept going for 12 years now and no sign of slowing down in creating opportunities to integrate civic learning into the lives of young people in our city on an ongoing basis? Well, we formed as now four primary partners. So Growing Up Boulder is a nonprofit organization. We have grown over the years from our initial budget, I believe, was $2,000 for the year. And that means just lots of volunteer time. To still lots of volunteer time, but now Growing Up Boulder has 2 half-time staff members, Mara, and then also a retired school teacher who is our liaison with the school district. The university is part of it, above all the design program, but also the environmental studies program and the School of Education participate and contribute their students as interns and participants in our projects. We work with the city government and with the public school district. And as a primary partners, we have a formal memorandum of understanding and MOU. So a written agreement about what we're doing and what the roles of the different partners are. However, over the years, we've worked with at least 60 community organizations. And in addition to members of our four primary partners. So we work with many other groups, community-based organizations that serve children and youth, such as after school or out of school summer programs, and also with some private schools often participate as well. And so we have a steering committee which meets quarterly and with representatives of all of the organizations that are involved in any one year, which is typically about 15, because the way we work is we go out and include young people in city projects. So sit down with members of city agencies in the spring and ask them what are they going to want to know from young people over the coming academic year. And then based on what those projects are going to be, we pull in different community-based organizations or different schools, depending on their interest in doing whatever it is the city wants to learn about from young people. And then there's an executive committee which manages, kind of major operational decisions like goals and fundraising and basic operations like that. So Mara made this slide, and I want to use it to really emphasize with you that yes, what I'm describing is a pretty formal program that's been going and growing for 12 years now. We serve as an advisory group to UNICEF USA's Child Friendly City Initiative. So at one end, you can have a network of partners, which includes many members and operates quite formally. And of course, UNICEF's Child Friendly City initiatives and involves many cities around the world. We involve quite a few partners in our one city. And as you get more complex like this, you really do need some formal procedures and formal written agreements. But on the other hand, just a partnership involving a few members, where it's basically you're operating with verbal agreements and just personal relationships, that's really good too. And of course, many of those smaller partnerships can involve many children, just even though they may one at a time, they may work with fewer children, but you can have many of them, and they're very valuable. And so as an example of a less formal structure, I'll use what Tori Dare at the California State University in Monterey Bay is doing now, because I understand that she was your speaker for your first Congress a year ago, and that she was one of the leading speakers who you had. So Tori worked with us in Boulder and at the university, teaching at the university for several years. She co-directed the Growing Up Boulder program with Mara for a few years. And then she took an offer at California State University in Monterey Bay in their applied environmental science department, where she works with university students who are preparing to be environmental educators or preparing to be urban planners. She wants to give them opportunities to learn how to work with community groups. So she arrived in California, did not have networks and partnerships yet and had to start from the beginning. She is a single teacher working there in her university classroom. And so she developed relationships over her few years there now, and formed partnerships, which are small partnerships, but still, I think, doing some really exciting work. So she found a local middle school teacher who wanted her students to have experiences of hands-on service learning. And she brings her environmental education university students into the school, and they're working with the middle school students to naturalize a school ground and make it more beautiful, more biodiverse, really turn it into a very rich outdoor learning space. And so that's an ongoing relationship. She also found a school which happened to be across the street from a nature reserve, from an elementary school, and then across the street, the headquarters of the Elkhorn Slough Foundation. A slough is a tidal marsh. And so forming a partnership with staff in the foundation and with teachers in the school. These are all students who, almost all of them are from farm worker families, Latino farm worker families in an agricultural valley. surrounded by farm fields that are sprayed with pesticides and are not safe places for children to go out into. So they actually don't have a lot of opportunities to encounter nature. So now they cross the street and they help the SLU Foundation with ecological restoration projects, learn about the ecology there, and have free playtime for nature play there. So small partnerships, but offering really valuable opportunities. And again, Torrey's university students are involved in both projects. So valuable opportunities for civic learning for a range of ages. So I want to go through lessons that we've learned during the more than 10 years of our Growing Up Bolder program. One is it's not just okay, it's good and well advised to start small and build trust among the partners to make young people's participation in environmental decision making part of the culture of how each organization works. And culture that you share together. Go where young people are. Partner with teachers and leaders in community organizations that children already know and trust. So we work with, besides classrooms, we work with out-of-school programs and after-school programs. So for example, at the bottom here, you see on the right-hand side, it's again, English language learners class out to scope out local resources in their community. In the middle, you have young people creating a community garden for their low-income housing development in their after-school program there. And on the left, you have Parks and Recreation program that engages children out of school. So, work with local schools and community organizations where young people are and where they feel comfortable. Of course, set clear goals for partnerships and agreements about who will do what. If you're more formal, those agreements will be written out, and more informal, it can just be sitting down together in the beginning of a project and really scoping out together what are our goals, who is going to do what. Invest in capacity building with partners so that all of you become more and more skilled at doing participatory projects with young people. This is a picture here of a project that involved both a fourth grade class and also residents in a senior living center in combining their ideas and presenting them to the city as a commercial strip right near them was being redeveloped to make it a more inviting and safe, attractive place for both children and senior citizens who actually have a lot of common needs in their communities together. Just recently, this past year, we involved young people who had experienced periods of homelessness, or young people with disabilities, young people of color, who could feel particularly threatened by the police in contributing to the police reform initiative in the city. And because it could involve experiences that had been traumatic for young people, and many of them had actually had very frightening experiences with the police, we brought in a partner who was an expert in healing-centered approach to participation, who trained everyone involved in that process. So continuous processes of learning, of bringing in people who can make participatory processes stronger and stronger over time. You want to create cycles of communication from young people to decision makers and back again. And that and back again is really critical because there are too many projects where young people have a voice and that's it. How do they know that they were actually heard and something is going to be done with their ideas? That's a critical part of it. So here are, these are representatives selected from a class to present the class's ideas for the civic area redevelopment in front of the city council. So a very formal setting. There's an open house about the ideas gathered for that civic area redevelopment from all age groups. And we worked even with preschoolers who actually they were the ones who brought in ideas about biodiversity. Is that like whatever you do in this space, it's got to be good for wildlife. And they were the ones, they and the elementary school students who thought about wildlife and animals, that they're part of the park as well. So they're headed off to do their presentation at an open house, a formal setting, not quite as formal as city council, but still a formal end. And exhibits are great, of course. We've done often do exhibits where young people are visually communicating their ideas through maps and models. And in this case, this is for the redevelopment of a neighborhood park. And so they had an open house open to all of the members of the community, the local community, as well as for city staff who were going to be carrying their ideas forward. But also we found it's really valuable to create informal opportunities where young people can sit down with decision makers and who come to their space. And so a comfortable informal space and have an exchange of ideas. And in this case, this is during the development of the city comprehensive plan. And those are city councilors on the right who are talking with representatives of different student groups who are sharing their ideas. Or here, young people were giving input into the redevelopment of another local park, and they built models and they divided into small groups, and each small group had created a model. And they had a day when members of the Parks Commission came in and sat down with them and kind of looked at their models and talked about their ideas with them, again, in a very comfortable setting in the young people's own space. So going along with that two-way conversation is using a wide range of communication methods to publicize how young people's ideas have contributed positively to their community and to tell young people how their ideas have been heard. So we do formal reports on every project. And those are essential for city staff or anyone who's tasked with taking the ideas forward, so detailed reports. But children themselves aren't going to probably read a detailed report. And neither are community members. So it's really important to have other means of communication, such as flyers you can hand out or posters people, city staff can put up on their wall. They actually like the short forms of communication too, but or share out in classrooms. So for example, this was a poster created that shows different ways that young people's ideas contributed to the final playground. This is the major kind of central playground in our city now, in the civic area redevelopment. And across the ages, we heard again and again, young people wanted tree houses. So there's one of the children's models where they say, we want a tree house. We couldn't quite do a tree house up in a tree because of insurance liability, but there is an approximation of it that was built into the final park. So young people's ideas and what happened, showing that visually. Plaques, or it could be less formal signs, because the civic area redevelopment was a major city project, a wealthy family in the city donated money to create this plaque, which tells everyone who comes here to that that wonderful playground, and also to other spaces in the redeveloped park. Children contributed these ideas. They worked on this, and a lot of what you're seeing comes from young people. So that's a very formal way of doing it, but just drawings. So these are in architects, the landscape architects' renderings, working from young people's ideas for that space. And you can turn around and turn young people's ideas into drawings that city staff can, or designers can work from quickly, and share those back to the young people themselves who were involved, who can then, talk about where they see their ideas incorporated into this. And then there's some couple pictures from the final space, and both the playground itself is filled with young people's ideas, and very popular, but also young people wanted safe spaces to get down and play in the creek, even for very young children. And you can see that where that's been created as well. Drawings, again, this is a drawing created after a transportation master plan that involved all ages, including young people. And wherever you see the orange dots, those are again, young people's ideas that were integrated into the final transportation master plan. And yes, we find that adults also kind of love these visuals that kind of condense together how ideas were used, but they're great for sharing back with young people themselves. Maps, of course. Again, each dot represents a place where young people's ideas were integrated, in this case, into the redeveloped civic area park. Here is another park in another part of the city, and young people's ideas integrated into it. We use letters too. So helping, often we may do the draft, but helping city staff craft letters that they send back to young people involved, saying, this is what you said, and this is what we're going to integrate into city policy that reflects what you said. And of course, you want evaluation. That's central. Did the information gathered and the action ideas generated meet the original goals of the project? What changes would we make going forward? So sitting down with all your partners and having those discussions at the end of an academic year. But also, whenever possible, going back to young people themselves. So these are some students who were tracked and brought back in on the opening day of the Civic Area Park to go through it and see how their ideas have been used, and have a discussion about what they thought of the new space and the whole experience of working on it. Streamline processes for planning and maintaining records and for evaluation. So for example, we use lots of templates. Like this is an example of a template. This is in the picture, Mara Mincer is meeting with some Latina mothers and their children who live in a trailer park to gather their ideas for a child-friendly cities map, which we created for the city, full of landmarks that children suggest as places they want to go in the city. And so have a template where, who did you meet with when? And then there's another page that summarizes the core ideas that came out of it, children's groups, adult groups. And so that can be put together into final reports and really seeing, okay, who was consulted along the way, and then what were the outcomes, and streamlining that record keeping. And of course, you have to cultivate adult allies with influence who can advocate for young people's ideas and carry ideas forward. Wheels of city government turn slowly and young people grow up fast. So you need people in positions of influence who are really your allies and are going to see that their ideas get carried forward. So we've been very fortunate. We had David Driscoll, a former director of community development and sustainability, who helped us create the Growing Up Boulder project, worked with us on it for years. We have a wonderful new city manager and a wonderful previous city manager before her who are also advocates for what we're doing. And we've tried to condense what we've learned into this book. It's available as an ebook or in print, where you'll find templates that I'm talking about, our reflections on partnership building, and also examples of others civic engagement projects with young people from around the world in environments of all kinds. And there's our website where you'll find just a wealth of information, including all the project reports. So I want to close in this last few minutes by going back to where I started, which is my concern on how do we help prepare young people for effective action as they face this time of planetary change. Because you know, the problems of a rapidly changing planet can easily seem overwhelming to adults as well as young people. And research shows that if young people just feel overwhelmed, they can fall into apathy or despair, just disconnect or deny. In fact, do many of the same things adults do when they're overwhelmed. So how do we help them instead form constructive hope? And this is a term that's been popularized by a Swedish researcher, Maria Ohala, who's done a lot of research on this. And you'll find her cited often in a review that I did, where I looked at both the research on how do we encourage children's connection with nature for all of the benefits that it brings, but at the same time, connecting with the natural world at risk can evoke a lot of difficult emotions. So how do we help young people at the same time cope with environmental loss? And this is a free open access article. Maria Ohala defines constructive hope as hope that looks risks in the face. So it faces the problem, but nevertheless, people find meaning in action. And in that way, they escape denial or paralyzing despair or apathy. And the research that I synthesized in that review, it has many recommendations. But I pulled out, I think, the really core kind of clusters of recommendations where recommendations really come together. And one of the things we need to do is create safe spaces where young people can share their environmental emotions and their ideas, even when the emotions are difficult, when they're worry and anxiety or fear or anger, but feeling that it's okay to have those emotions faced with the situation that we're in on this planet now. You're not going to stop there, but you need to recognize that those emotions are okay, they're understandable, and also that you're not alone, that other people have those feelings too. Because research shows that when young people are not allowed safe spaces to share these emotions, they're more likely to fall into apathy or despair. We need to help young people learn what they can do as individuals that can really have an effective, positive impact on the environment and on addressing global environmental problems, which of course show up in local environmental problems, and they're all interdependent. And so learning what they can do that can be effective. But when a problem is too big for any person to solve by themselves, there's always a risk that taking action can feel futile if you feel like you're doing it all alone. And therefore, it's also critical to show young people that they're not alone, that other people share their concerns and other people are taking action too. And it's very important to give young people opportunities to experience collective action with all of its power and its possibilities to create change. So this is my last slide, and I will close here. When you look at involving young people in civic learning and civic engagement, it includes those kind of core points that I just showed that help to build a sense of constructive hope. For one thing, it often includes just sharing, opportunities to discuss, opportunities to share emotions. But then in terms of action, when young people are involved in collective activities in their communities, they're developing skills. Kind of they're learning what their capabilities are as an individual. At the same time, they're surrounded by others who are taking action. And so they're seeing what others are doing, others who are their age, others who are like them, adults also, partners of all kinds. And they're having that experience of collective action and learning those processes, learning how it works and how it's organized. And learning what we can do together. So civic engagement in itself contains those main recommendations for how to enable young people to avoid apathy and despair and build constructive hope as we all face environmental challenges together. Thank you, and I'll close there, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you and engaging with you in questions and answers. Thank you.
Bueno, muchas gracias. Ya estamos de vuelta y vamos a estar ahora en el estudio. Está conectada con nosotros desde Estados Unidos, Louise Chawla. Hi, Louise, are you there? Vamos a tener un espacio de conversación. Todo esto estuvo siendo registrado por CIEDS, quienes van a estar también apareciendo en un recuadro aquí arriba en las pantallas. Muy interesante la presentación, el compromiso cívico, una perspectiva que a veces no se ve directamente relacionada con la educación ambiental, pero que es tan importante para poder generar, ¿cierto?, este nivel de compromiso, de acción positiva, de este sentido de eficacia, ¿cierto?, de agencia en los jóvenes y niños. No sé si ya estamos con Luis. Hi, Louise. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Great. Now we can hear you. We are so glad and so honored to have you here. You will be here with two fans of you. We have read your work, and we are really happy to have you here. So thank you very much.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for giving me this chance to connect with you.
Thanks. Well, I am Martín Bascopé and Andrés Reed. We are both academics and we teach teachers here in Villarrica, and we really enjoy your presentations, and we will try to have a little space of conversation. Le estábamos contando a Luis que somos grandes admiradores de ella, que estamos muy felices de que nos esté acompañando, y vamos a tener ahora un momento de conversación respecto de su presentación. No sé si quieres empezar tú, Andrés, con alguna pregunta.
Sí, hi Luis, nice to meet you, nice to see you, nice to hear you.
Yes.
Bueno, yo voy a hacer la pregunta en español, Martín me va a ayudar a traducir. Bueno, primero que nada quería agradecer el video que nos comparte. Siento que para el estado de la educación ambiental, la educación para el desarrollo sustentable en Chile, hace un muy bonito punto en relación a la acción cívica, a cómo vincular esos intereses ambientales en la acción cívica. Pero llama la atención, a mí por lo menos poderosamente, la presencia de gente de la tercera edad. No sé, Martín, si quieres ir.
Well, Andres was saying that thanks for your presentation, that he thinks that your presentation make a big point on civic action and its contribution to environmental education, and it brings him the attention this idea of working with elder people.
Yes. Y quería preguntarte si ustedes han podido documentar o indagar acerca de cuáles son los beneficios que perciben los adultos mayores, las personas mayores, a la hora de involucrarse en este tipo de proyectos con gente joven. ¿Sí? ¿Tienen alguna idea de cómo eso genera beneficio en las personas que participan?
So regarding elder people and these kind of activities, he was wondering if you have been able to document or have some findings regarding the benefits for the elder people. What kind of benefits or changes does this kind of activity makes not just in children or young people, but to the elder ones?
Well, first of all, for people who are retired, who are living in a senior living center, it shows they're still needed. And I think just as it's important for young people to feel that they can contribute to their society, older people also can feel sidelined and like they're not fully part of society anymore. And so for them too, it brings them out, it brings them back into a community space, in this case into a school. They're treated as experts who can speak not just for themselves as individuals, but also for other elderly people at the senior center where they live. And gives them responsible roles, because all of this is in the context of working with the city on a city project. And in the example that I showed, improving a commercial strip, a very important street in their community, and making it a safer, more attractive, more comfortable place. And as I mentioned, it's also a process of capacity building for both groups, because many older people don't really know how city government works very clearly, and of course it's complicated and it varies depending on what the project is, and so they're also learning this whole process of what the city has to go through in redeveloping part of their neighborhood. And they form relationships with the children, and that was really clear. They formed friendships between young and old. The elderly people were frequently in the classroom, helping the young people, speaking for what they need, representing senior citizens, and also helping the young people develop their ideas and communicate clearly. And they really, they form a relationship there, and then that can spin off in other ways. They may decide, I'm going to keep volunteering in the school and coming in, and it can open doors for them for continuing engagement in their community.
Thank you. So, entonces nos dice Luis que bueno, que en el fondo existen beneficios tantos la mayoría de estas personas son personas jubiladas, retiradas, que ya no están, que también se sienten un poco se sienten como un poco alejados de la toma de decisiones, no son considerados, no son escuchadas sus voces, al igual que los niños muchas veces. Entonces, esto lo hace sentir un poco que todavía se necesitan ellos, que pueden también realizar una contribución, que forman completamente parte de este espacio comunitario. Y en el caso en este caso se trató de remodelar un espacio, una parte importante de la ciudad, un paseo comercial, en donde su voz fue escuchada y ellos fueron considerados como expertos. Y en ese sentido ellos pudieron hacer de este lugar un lugar más atractivo, un lugar en el que se sintieran más seguros. Y en ese sentido, esta idea como de tener capacidades, de construir capacidades, ¿cierto? También en un sentido de entender cómo funciona la ciudad, cómo funcionan las tomas de decisiones en la ciudad. Muchas veces tanto los niños como los adultos no conocen de este proceso y ellos forman parte de este proceso formal y también aprenden en ese sentido. Y por último, también hablaba un poco de la relación que se forma con los niños, de que se forma una relación de amistad. Están juntos por harto tiempo en la sala, y son relaciones, se empiezan a compartir ideas, se empiezan a comunicar entre ellos y muchas veces se abren las puertas de la escuela para que ellos puedan volver, se generan relaciones de amistad a largo plazo. Entonces es es muy recíproco en ese sentido, tanto para los niños como para los adultos.
Muchas gracias, Martín, y
Exacto.
thanks Louise. Tenía otra pregunta, Martín, no sé si me ayudas también. Me interesa saber si también han visualizado qué tipo de aprendizajes alcanzan los universitarios que participan en este proyecto, y qué diferencia hay frente a otro tipo de intervenciones, o sea, o qué tipo de aprendizaje se desarrollan en este tipo de intervenciones que no suceden en otros procesos. No sé si me entiendes por eso.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Andres was asking about now in this kind of process you also work with higher education students. So he's wondering what kinds of learning do they have here that they can't reach in other kind of learning experiences. What is the important thing, the new thing that this kind of experiences bring to them?
Well, the most fundamental one is hands-on experience with working with community members in a participatory way. You know, as I say, I'm in a design program, so we have students who are planning to become architects, landscape architects, urban planners, urban designers. And you sit in a classroom, you read books, you look at lots and lots and lots of images, but it's theoretical. And you know, until you actually get out in a community to make a participatory process happen, you don't really know what that involves unless you do it, because then it's practical learning. And we want our students to go out and not just kind of impose their ideas on the world, but to develop their ideas in dialogue, in interaction with the communities that they're going to be affecting. We really, I mean, you can look at the whole field of design and see that that's been an issue, you know, from early on. And how do we make sure that the places we plan, we design, we develop are really going to support the life processes, the life needs of the people that use those places? And you can't really know that unless you get out of, you know, the university, or you get out of your office, your professional office, and you actually go out on the street and out in the parks and out in the housing developments, and you engage with the people or the kind of people who you are working for in the end. So that's a critical lesson, and we evaluate our projects, and it's really eye-opening for the university students. And they say that over and over again. Like some say, I went into this project thinking, what can I learn from a bunch of kids, making little models with toilet paper rolls, and then realizing, wow, they see things in a different way, and they come up with really creative ideas, and they get me thinking about this space in new ways. And I actually learned a ton, and I want to keep on working this way. And that's our goal. That's what we hope the university students will come away with. And so we do studio classes. We, bring our projects into studio classes and say, okay, this is your project for the semester, and you're going to learn about this space and the city's development plans, and what it's going to mean for the community, and get out in the community and learn that, and young people's views about that. But also they're developing skills that they can take away, and some of them really catch on and say, this is the way I want to work. I want to become a community development planner, or want to become a landscape architect who works in interactive ways. And then they can do internships and really kind of dig into learning these skills to quite a high level before they leave. So we are always using undergraduate students as interns as well. And we involve graduate students in kind of helping with the process and documenting and evaluating it, doing more of the research side. So it really provides skill building opportunities for university students.
Thank you.
And I'm wondering, should I break down what I say into maybe smaller pieces in the future?
Maybe. Don't worry, I'm trying to make my best to take notes. Entonces, lo que nos decía un poco Luis era que, claro, la pregunta, a ver si retomamos, era un poco hablando de ya, ¿qué pasa con los estudiantes de educación superior, con los estudiantes universitarios? ¿Qué pasa con ellos? ¿Qué experiencias trae o qué aprendizaje se ven aquí? Y aquí dice que lo más fundamental es aprender, como se dice, con las manos en la masa, ¿cierto? Aprender a partir de la experiencia concreta y real. Muchas veces se puede leer sobre desarrollo comunitario, sobre participaciones ciudadanas, se pueden ver imágenes, pero todo es muy teórico, y hasta que no lo haces, hasta que no vives un proceso participativo, no puedes aprender las habilidades que necesitas para poder desarrollarlo, para poder llevarlo a cabo. Y en ese sentido, esto de desarrollar ideas en diálogo, en interacción con la comunidad, marca una diferencia grande y es una experiencia que realmente es importante para los estudiantes. Entonces, porque en el fondo uno no sabe cómo vamos a cubrir las necesidades reales de las personas que van a utilizar este espacio público, este parque, esta calle, o lo que estén, o algún desarrollo inmobiliario cuando trabajan con arquitectos. Entonces dicen que después, cuando realizan una evaluación, porque les preguntan después a los estudiantes qué aprendieron, y que realmente ella ocupa este término como que les abre los ojos. Esta idea de que, porque ellos parten un poco de la idea de que voy a trabajar con unos niños que me van a estar haciendo modelitos con árboles o con maquetas. ¿Qué voy a aprender de esto? En verdad va a ser más un trabajo de apoyo para los niños, pero no le ven como el sentido, no sé, a la arquitectura o al desarrollo del proyecto. Pero después dicen, ¿sabes qué? Las ideas con que salen los niños son realmente súper creativas. Es una metodología que me sirve, que te saca un poco de la caja, ¿no? Y se dan cuenta de voy a hacerlo así. Incluso algunos que dicen, desde aquí en adelante voy a empezar a ocupar este tipo de metodología en mi trabajo. Y dice que ha habido el caso de estudiantes que dicen, ya voy a trabajar en esto, voy a ser un planificador de desarrollo comunitario. Y en ese sentido, es súper importante para ella involucrar a estudiantes de pre y posgrado, no solamente como guías, como monitores de estas experiencias de participación, sino también como evaluadores y como personas que pueden después ver un poco el impacto que tuvo este desarrollo.
Gracias, Martín. No sé si tienes tú alguna pregunta, yo tengo, pero de pronto formula
Sí,
tú una y...
voy a hacer yo una pregunta ahora a Luis. Voy primero en español y después en inglés. Me pareció muy interesante en la presentación de Luis el foco que se ponía en la comunicación y en distintas formas de comunicar lo que se está haciendo. Muchas veces la comunicación es parte importante del aporte que uno puede hacer. Si esto se comunica a la comunidad, si se sabe afuera un poco de la escuela, eso genera un impacto también positivo para los estudiantes. Pero yo me preguntaba, ¿cómo es que estos procesos de comunicación forman parte de todo el proyecto, en el fondo? Si es que esto es solamente al final, o si es que hay instancias en donde uno puede ir como aprovechando estos registros para el proceso pedagógico. ¿Y de qué forma si es que lo han hecho? So, Luis, my question goes in regards to communication. You were talking about plaques, renders, drawings, maps, and different ways of communicate the work done by children and in these collaborations and these partnerships. But how do you incorporate this communication process in the education during the project, during the educational process? This is only a thing that only happens when you finish and you communicate afterwards, or you use also this communication or this drawings, plaques, I don't know, different kinds of communications during the process, because it's very in my experience it's very important this kind of registry of the process to understand also what are you doing during these partnerships.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And if you think back to the pictures I showed of a small group of kind of youth leaders having that conversation with city council members sitting in a circle, or the parks commissioner, and that was just kind of one group in that picture, but the several parks commissioners had come into a classroom and each one was meeting with a small group. I could have showed you many other images too of bringing leaders, decision makers, to engage with young people in their own spaces. For example, where young people are in the process of developing their ideas, and they may I showed the picture of the open house, but we often we'll do that in a classroom too. And then people who represent kind of different facets of the city decision-making process will come in for that kind of classroom, or it could be multiple classrooms working together, will come in to kind of see where their ideas are. Another example, for example, a class of English language learners. So mostly Latino students where their families are speaking Spanish at home, but also new immigrants who could be from anywhere in the world, Asia, Eastern Europe, anywhere, who we work in an ongoing way with these classes of children who are in the process of learning English, because these public speaking opportunities are just great for them. And so they began to develop ideas for creating redeveloping the playground on their school to make it for nature play and also for children with all abilities. So they had to, and we've done this a few times, they had to learn about how do you move through the world if you're blind? How do you move? What does it mean to be in the world and be deaf? What if you have sensory processing disorder and you easily just get overwhelmed? So they had to invite people like that, including other children, into their classroom. They had to write the letters and invite them to come, and then come up with interview questions. Um, and and so they had done that, and then they developed initial ideas. And then a member from the Parks and Recreation staff came in and said, well, okay, this is what your budget is going to be. And, I'm looking at your ideas, and kind of, this is what you could do with the budget that you have. And these are the kind of decisions you're going to have to make to stay within that budget. So we actually do, I think the critical in between stages of communication that you're talking about are those meetings when people in decision-making positions actually come to where the students are, into their classrooms, or after-school programs, and just have these small, more intimate conversations about, oh, let me hear what you're thinking about at this point. And in terms of, the context we're working in with a development project or a playground development, this is what's possible within the budget we're working with. So having those kinds of conversations. And I'm thinking too, we did a program for teen mothers. So young women in high school who already had babies. And how does the city function for them? And it was really, they were not going to go in a public space. They were just, that was too overwhelming to them. So a couple of women city council members went into the classroom and, had a conversation with them about, how does the city function for you? You're a young mom, you don't have a lot of money, you have a baby. What are the problems you face in trying to get around and do the things you need to do to live a good life with your baby? And just make that a comfortable conversation. And this women city councilors who were involved continued for years after to refer back to those conversations as they were thinking about city decision making, and inform other members of the city council based on their experience. So those in-person interactions in the interim are really important.
Thank you. Muchas gracias, Luis. Bueno, yo le preguntaba un poco como qué pasaba, cómo establecer estos puentes de comunicación en espacios intermedios, no solamente comunicar lo que pasa al final del proyecto, y ella me decía que claro, que era una cosa bien importante en la conversación que se tiene con quienes administran los parques, la gente de los municipios, las personas que toman decisiones, que no estuvieran solamente presentes al final del proyecto, sino que se abriera, y hablaba un poco de abrir la casa durante el proceso de toma de decisiones. Entonces ella daba un ejemplo, por ejemplo, en una clase de inglés, en donde estaban viendo también relacionado con estos proyectos de parque, cómo podemos abrir estos parques para personas con habilidades diferentes, con distintas visiones de mundo, personas que venían de contextos asiáticos, latinos, y ellos empezaron a hacer esta pregunta y propusieron algunas ideas, y la cosa es que, claro, llegaban, y en estas etapas intermedias podía venir esta persona a la municipalidad y decía, bueno, esto es lo que tenemos este presupuesto, no nos da para hacer todo esto, y en el fondo ir dando feedbacks intermedios, dando retroalimentación para que pudieran, y en ese sentido ella dice que es muy importante la presencia de estos mediadores, de estas personas que son tomadores de decisiones y que van y que se encuentran y que son parte de esta asociación que se genera entre la escuela y su contexto, ¿cierto? Entonces estas pequeñas conversaciones, ella hablaba también de otro ejemplo de madres adolescentes, en el fondo cómo funciona la ciudad para estas madres adolescentes, muchas veces por inseguridad, por miedo, no quieren salir afuera al espacio público, y se dio una muy buena oportunidad en que fueron estas personas de la municipalidad, en este caso, a conversar con estas madres adolescentes a la sala. ¿Cómo podrías aprovechar la ciudad para ti, para tu niño, para que te sientas en un ambiente seguro? Y salieron muy buenas ideas, y de hecho ella hablaba que después de los proyectos continuaban estas conversaciones, y pasa a ser como una forma, ella ven que es una muy buena oportunidad para los tomadores de decisiones también, el generar estas asociaciones. Entonces, que le ponía mucha importancia a de que las interacciones se mantuvieran durante todo el proceso.
Sí, tenemos una pregunta de YouTube, así es que
It's a question from the audience in YouTube.
dice: muchas gracias, Luis. Creo que es clave lo último que comentaste en tu exposición. El mensaje que estamos entregando genera miedo principalmente. Me ha tocado ver harta desesperanza en niños y niñas, dice. Esta pregunta la hace Juan Pablo Sakamoto. Y la pregunta es: ¿podrías profundizar desde su experiencia en las principales dificultades para avanzar hacia la esperanza? ¿Y cómo lo han resuelto? Te la leo de nuevo. Dice: ¿podrías profundizar desde tu experiencia en las principales dificultades para avanzar hacia la esperanza? ¿Y cómo la han resuelto?
So, Luis, this is a question from the audience in YouTube. He was saying that it was a key point, the last thing that you present in your your video. This things about of being afraid of the future, of losing hope. Because of all this environmental precarity and all the news and scientific work that talks about a very sad future. So how can we go deeper in going from difficulties to this constructive hope? And if you can be a little bit more deeper in how you transit towards hope, and how to solve the difficulties that might emerge in this process.
No, it's a very important question. It's what I think about a lot, and communicate with other people who are kind of working on that same question, because I think it's a major question we all face, all of us who work with young people, and of course we face it in ourselves as well. And actually that's, I think, part of the challenge is it requires an ability for the adults who work with children to face their own emotional struggles as we look into the future. And I've seen polls with young people, and I will say in my country, I'm sure you see in the news, we're really struggling now to hold on to being a democracy, and polls show that young people are very aware of that, and that we have a government that's not really functioning well right now to solve the big problems. So they're looking at a future where they need to feel that they have a government, we're speaking about civic action, that they have a government that is responsive to the big environmental problems and the social justice problems. And I see you just have a new president who represents a younger generation, and I hope you're moving ahead with young people feeling that they can really play a role too in moving your country ahead to solving problems. And that's a different context in different countries around the world, to start with. And especially speaking about civic action, of feeling both that feeling that we can work within a government that can be responsive to our need to create a better world and start to heal the planet instead of continuing to harm it. And I'll stop right there. That's the first part of my answer, but let me stop there for the translation. And then I'll go on with the second part.
Thank you. Thank you, Luis. Dice que ya vamos a ver la primera. Es una pregunta muy importante. Le damos muchas gracias al auditor por hacerla. Dice que, claro, esto es algo que piensan mucho ella con sus colegas todo el tiempo, de cómo enfrentar este camino hacia la esperanza constructiva, ¿cierto? Cómo afrontar estos miedos que surgen por el futuro. Y dice que esto es tanto un desafío para los niños como para los mismos educadores, para nosotros. Y que el gran desafío está también en enfrentar nuestras propias reacciones emocionales respecto del futuro. Y que trabajando eso también se puede ir encontrando caminos para poder apoyar y ayudar a los Estados Unidos. Ella dice que en estos momentos en Estados Unidos se está peleando por la democracia, que se está viendo que hay un gobierno que no está respondiendo, que no se está haciendo cargo de los temas medioambientales, de temas de justicia social. Y ante eso se necesita tomar acciones, pero que en el fondo hay que recuperar un poco la confianza también en las instituciones, la confianza en que estas pequeñas acciones que uno hace pueden tener una repercusión mayor. Dice que está muy contenta por lo que ve que está pasando en Chile, que dice que ahora se acaba de elegir a un presidente de una nueva generación, y ella espera que esta elección también lleve un poco a empoderar a las nuevas generaciones, empoderar a los jóvenes, a que sus acciones sí pueden tener resultados, a que uno tiene un gobierno que responde a esta idea y que está dispuesto a hablar de estos temas de justicia social, de temas medioambientales, y en ese sentido es muy importante tener, y para generar acción cívica, que es un poco el tema fundamental, también es importante encontrar esta respuesta para poder trabajar y ponerse en acción por esto.
Sí.
Luis dice que tenía la segunda parte de su respuesta, que paró ahí.
Okay.
So now you can continue, Luis.
Okay. All right. So the second part. But, even when young people feel very frustrated with what is happening at the kind of federal, national level in their country, it's possible to take action on the local level. And that's where young people form relationships with other people and can visibly see change happen. My country, we have oil and gas corporations have so much power, and they've blocked action on climate change, for example, for decades. We already knew by the 1970s kind of that this is really critical, but we're decades later now and still facing the urgency of taking action. And so what happened in the meantime is many cities, big and small, around the country decided, okay, if action's not happening at that level, we can take action at our level. And so regardless of what the issue is related to the civic issue is related to social justice, related to the environment, young people can be part of action at a local level. And of course, that adds up, and it's all meaningful. And it also, a lot of experiments can be done at a local level that, can then be shared more widely. So the local level really matters. And that's where you're working when you're working with students, engaging them with civic action. And so that's a really important place to start. So talking about not feeling you're alone with the problems, and so the emotional space to just talk in an open way and honestly share feelings and fears. Classroom can be a safe space for that. And many, we have, studies where young people talk about the importance of being in classrooms that are a safe space to kind of openly discuss these kind of civic issues and their feelings about it and their sense of what we can do. And for decades, we have research related to civic development that show, they call it classroom climate. And it really makes a difference. And young people who have these kind of open classrooms to share political topics, feeling safe, expressing different views. And of course, environmental action is a political topic too. That the same young people in those kind of classrooms are more likely to say that they're interested in politics. They plan to be involved in politics when they get older. They intend to vote, and they intend to be civically engaged. So the classroom is a really important place, or the after-school program, or wherever it is. But then, it can also bring people into the classroom, or even show, you can do that virtually as well. But people who are working locally or in the region to solve environmental problems, bring them in, and let them be engaged. There was a big study done in my country on, it was a curriculum designed for the southeastern region of the country. So it's a big space involving many schools. And they actually created just little videos of local people working to protect the forests as they face climate change, and the forest's own powers of nature's own powers of resilience. So sharing the science about that, but also what was being done in terms of forest management to strengthen forest capacity to change along with the changing climate. And so that was a way that really covered a whole region. And then young people also then discussed what they could do. And where possible, they went out and saw what some local forest managers were doing. So seeing that other people are taking action too, and as I say, in person is wonderful, but even if it's virtual, even if it's through videos of what local people are doing, and then having opportunities to actually do some hands-on work. Tree planting, or all the different examples that I was showing you, and creating biodiverse habitats, or we can, and part of generating the list of what are the different possibilities we can do that will have a positive impact for strengthening resilience in my community, in my region, as we face climate change, and then deciding among all those different possibilities, kind of what do we want to take on. So, there are many practical ways of creating those opportunities of what can I do, what are other people doing. I'm not alone, with what I'm thinking and feeling. And the classroom or after school programs, nature center programs, where young people meet regularly and can have these ongoing processes, they're the place where this needs to happen for young people.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Yeah. So this is, esta es la segunda parte, perdón, de la respuesta. Primero estábamos hablando, ¿cierto?, de que claro, muchas veces era importante que tuvieran referentes ya desde los gobiernos para que sientan un poco que sus acciones son escuchadas. Pero por otro lado, dice, muchas veces, a pesar de esta frustración, de que muchas veces, como nos contaba en el caso de Estados Unidos, veían que a nivel central, a nivel federal, no se veía una respuesta, se puede tomar acción local, dicen, y uno puede ver que los cambios suceden a nivel local. Ella ha visto que grandes corporaciones vinculadas con petroleras en Estados Unidos bloqueaban muchas veces estas decisiones a nivel central, lo que generaba gran frustración, pero en ese sentido las ciudades grandes, ciudades pequeñas, intermedias, empezaron a tomar acción por sí mismas. Y en ese sentido, independiente del tema, si es justicia social o en medio ambiente, los jóvenes siempre pueden ser parte significativa de este cambio local. Y para que luego estas puedan ser también conocidas globalmente, como lo que está pasando ahora, que se empiecen a conocer en toda Latinoamérica, por ejemplo, iniciativas como las que ha liderado Luis. Entonces, dice que es muy importante tomar acción global y que al mismo tiempo es muy importante el ambiente del aula, y eso es una cosa bien clave y que se ha probado en muchos estudios. Tener la clase como un espacio seguro en donde se puedan discutir abiertamente temas de relevancia política, que pueden ser temas medioambientales, que pueden ser temas de justicia social, pero que no hay un tabú al respecto. Muchas veces estos temas, por ser incómodos, no se discuten. Y ella dice que ha sido estudiado por décadas esto, de que cuando hay apertura a las visiones políticas de los estudiantes, también es mucho más probable que estos en adelante tomen acciones políticas, participen en acciones a nivel comunitario o a nivel incluso de nivel de gobierno, o tomen acción política. Si no, pasa muchas veces que seguimos manteniéndonos al margen y no tomamos acción ni siquiera a nivel local. Entonces, por eso también la importancia de la clase y del aula, y en ese sentido reitera la idea de traer personas al aula, de que sea un espacio abierto no solo para la contención y para es un ambiente seguro emocionalmente, sino que también vengan los tomadores de decisiones y las personas que están trabajando a nivel local, vayan al aula. De hecho, ella habla que hay un estudio que se realizó en una región grande de Estados Unidos, en donde se tomaron una serie de videos sobre personas que estaban tomando acciones para el manejo responsable de bosques. Y entonces, como ¿qué se ha hecho en términos de manejo de bosques? Era la pregunta principal, y después se podían llevar a la clase videos en donde ellos podían ver todo lo que se estaba haciendo por estas distintas personas que estaban tomando acción. Y ella dice, a lo mejor si los podemos tener en vivo y en directo, mejor, pero incluso por video podemos ver distintas opciones, y una vez que uno tiene como este abanico de opciones, podemos decir, ya, bueno, ¿cuáles opciones tenemos y qué acciones vamos a tomar para la resiliencia, ¿cierto? Para acciones que nos permitan regenerar nuestros ecosistemas. Y en ese sentido, con eso podemos ir, con este abanico, podemos por un lado tomar varias opciones y al mismo tiempo saber que no estamos solos en esto, de que hay un grupo también que está tomando decisiones a nivel local, y en ese sentido abrir espacios tanto en la sala de clase como en opciones de talleres abiertos para después de la escuela, es una cosa muy importante. Creo que estamos llegando al tiempo.
Así es.
Nos habría encantado poder seguir conversando con Luis. Luis, we are reaching our deadline. Yeah, our time is over. We would have been talking with you for several more hours maybe, but we are restricted here. We are very happy to have you here now in Zoom. Hopefully we will be able to invite you presentially here to Chile, to Villarrica. We are very happy to share this opportunity with you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Louise.
Well, thank you also from my side. I really welcome this opportunity to learn more about you and what you are doing.
We will happily do it. Nos da mucha gracia, dice que también le gustaría saber qué es lo que estamos haciendo acá. We invite you also well, they are in Spanish, but we have a lot of specific projects and educational interventions that we have been sharing, almost 60 different experiences and research in sustainable education for sustainability. So we will be very happy to share everything with you. Eso, y ahora Andrés nos va a contar un poco qué es lo que se nos viene para la tarde.
Sí, bueno, las invitamos a todos, a todas, a que se conecten a partir de las 3, el bloque de las 3 a las 4:30. Tenemos 2 paneles. El panel 9 es sobre educación socioambiental. Ahí tenemos 3 presentaciones. Va a estar la experiencia de un plan de educación socioambiental con enfoque ciudadano. La autora ahí es Diana Paz Soto Reyes. También va a estar la ponencia Educación basada en la restauración ecológica. El caso del relave de Andacollo, hace una nueva relación sociedad-naturaleza. Hay un equipo ahí liderado por Ramón Ignacio Olivares que va a participar. Y también tenemos la presentación, sistematización de experiencias de vermicompostaje comunitaria para aportar al proceso formativo desde un proyecto piloto en sustentabilidad para la escuela de Temuco. Y ahí va a estar el equipo de energía humana en movimiento y el equipo Educa Sustentable. Y el otro panel, también a las 3 de la tarde, conectarse a través de la página del CIEDS.cl, está el panel 10, aprendizaje basado en proyectos y desafíos. Ahí hay 3 ponencias también. La primera, implementación de programas de aprendizaje basado en proyectos con enfoque medioambiental y ciudadano, a cargo de Gonzalo Concha. La ponencia Desafíos Integrados, aproximación metodológica para la educación sustentable, de nuestro colega y amigo Pablo Gutiérrez. Y finalmente, la ponencia Experiencia significativa de la enseñanza para la sostenibilidad ambiental desde el hogar, con el curso de didáctica de las ciencias del programa de licenciatura en la educación infantil de la Universidad de Pamplona en el primer periodo del 2021, una experiencia que viene desde España. Y ahí la autora es Sandra Lucero. Así que los esperamos y ahí nos seguiremos viendo. Muchas gracias, Martín, por tu traducción y esfuerzo. Así es que nada, que tengan una muy buena tarde.